Hello folks, it's Fife here from Fife and Flow. With all this COVID stuff going on, some of us have a lot more spare time on our hands. While some are able to bike on their trails, the less fortunate can't really leave their homes, and so this skill is something that you can do anywhere, from on the mountain to in your backyard. Today I'm going to be breaking down the wheelie. While I am not yet a self-proclaimed master at the wheelies, I did just recently feel like I really made a breakthrough with my learning process, and so I can 100% relate to you while doing wheelies. So even if you've already embarked on this journey of learning this new skill, or you're a newbie just trying it out, there's something on this video for you. When I first started to learn how to wheelie, just like many of you, I turned to YouTube. And there are a lot of great tutorials out there. But one thing I wish I knew before forming my expectations of the learning process was how long it was going to take. And let me tell you, it's going to take a while. I walked into learning how to wheelies with the idea of if I had some really focused practice, I would get this mastered in a couple of days. And let me tell you, with some on and off practice, I've been practicing for 5 months and I'm just starting to feel confident with my wheelies. The only thing that got me through was finding out that I wasn't alone, and a lot of my friends had similar struggles where it took them quite a bit to actually get the technique down. My friend has this theory that there is a thing called the Wheelie Gene, and you either have it or you don't. And I honestly kind of started to believe that halfway through my practice, just because I was having a hard time really getting my weight back, and I thought, oh, it's maybe because my legs are too long and my torso is too short and I can't really get my weight back far enough, or my seat tube angle on my bike is just too steep and it just can't be done. But I would like to say that I am confident that anyone and any bike can wheelie. Well, let's get started with the basics. Bike setup. Well, first you gotta pick out a bike. Honestly, any bike would work, but I recommend using one that you're really comfortable on. I am just using my Fizzari LaSalle Peak because that's the bike I ride the most and I feel at home on it. With seat height, I like to keep my seat 3/4 of the way up. Initially, I liked having my seat really high when I started learning, but I quickly learned that actually makes so it's really hard to balance, and it makes you feel like you're falling back more and that it's really hard to take control over your bike. And please, 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 no clipping in unless you have a death wish. Okay, now let's talk gearing. So with gearing, it's pretty subjective depending on what surface you're on or the speed that you're trying to pop up your wheelie. I have a 32th chainring up front and I ride Eagle, and I keep it usually between the 4th or 5th gear from the easiest gear. For the surface you're going to be riding on, you want it really flat and level with not a lot of bumps. You can try doing asphalt or a grass field. Now that we're finished with the basics, let's start popping up our front wheel. You do this by timing a weight shift back as you're bringing a pedal stroke from 12 o'clock down to 6 o'clock. You time these together so you're pushing down with your pedal as you're leaning back to get the front wheel off the ground. The weight shift begins in a pretty aggressive position with your chest closer to the handlebars, and right when your pedal starts to go down into the pedal stroke, you lean back and you're able to pop up the front wheel with the weight shift and the pedal stroke. This weight shift should not be a jerky movement. It should be really smooth and really in control. Another mistake I see quite often is that when people bring their weight back, they actually bring their arms close to their chest, and this actually makes so you aren't able to sustain your wheelie, and it brings your weight back down. Once you get your wheel off the ground, your arms should be straight so your weight can be as far back as possible. I always like to think that I'm not using my arms at all. They're just hanging onto the bike, and what's doing the work is my torso moving from the forward position and shifting backwards. So the position that you're in when your wheel's up, where your arms are straight and you're really leaning back and trying to relax, kind of reminds me of those bikers with the really tall and wide handlebars. You pretty much should look like those guys. Alright, so before you start popping up wheelies, I'm going to cover the concept of the rear brake. So with your bike moving, the rear brake, especially when you get your wheelie up, is going to be the thing that brings your front wheel down. Even if you're not getting your front wheel high enough to really use the rear brake, try practicing it anyway to make it a habit. So when you're getting it high enough to actually feather it so you're able to balance your wheelie, it comes naturally. Now that you've spent some time popping up that front wheel, and getting acquainted with your rear brake, it's time to totally crush the fear of the float zone. I'm first going to describe the float zone. You might have already noticed that when you pop up that front wheel, you end up just having to like pedal and pedal faster, and you're kind of chasing your front wheel and you never feel like you can really get it up, and it always ends up falling down. This is because you are not quite in the float zone just yet. This can kind of be compared to you're running and you're leaning a little bit too far forward and you can't keep up with your upper body and end up falling flat on your face. Don't try this at home. In the float zone, when you get your front wheel up, you should be able to pedal the same cadence and not fall forward or backwards because you're balanced. And so that does sound all perfect on paper and nice and tranquil, but whenever I got to the float zone while practicing, I kind of got the same feeling as when I dropped in on a roller coaster ride. You know when your stomach just drops? That's what I got, and I honestly kind of got scared of the float zone. The thing that I thought was the biggest barrier was actually becoming comfortable with the float zone. I was always scared of falling off the back, and whenever I got to that point, my stomach kind of gave a little leap. But in order to get good at wheelies, you have to make the float zone your best friend. I have a little drill that I did to get over this fear. Honestly, you just have to kind of face it head on, and what I did was I would ride my bike and purposely get it to pass the float zone when you're falling backwards, and I would jump off my bike. Once I got comfortable with jumping off my bike, I knew I could do it at any point, and I was gonna be able to eject from my bike safely. And after that, the balance zone ended up being my favorite place to be. Next skill to master is controlling the bike once it's up in a float zone. A combination of turning the handlebars and bringing your knees wide or in towards your bike, and even shifting on your seat, helps you steer throughout the wheelie. The last tip I want to add is be patient with yourself. Learning how to wheelie is not easy and can be really frustrating. So keep at it, keep on practicing, try to be more consistent than I was, like learn from my mistakes. Here are some clips of my journey of learning how to wheelie. It's really cool to see the progression. I recommend filming yourself because I had a hard time feeling like I was improving until I looked back on some old clips. Another idea is to practice with some of your friends. It makes things a little bit more fun. You can learn from each other, and also it's a helpful reminder to know that everyone has struggles with the wheelie.
Oh, I'll get one. Yeah!
I definitely need to get it so I don't chase my wheel. Again, I'd like to reiterate that wheelies are hard. Some days you'll feel like you're not improving, or heck, I even have bad days where I feel like I can't wheelie. But eventually, you will have those breakthrough moments, and with a lot of practice, you can learn how to wheelie. So if anyone has any other tips or advice on learning how to wheelie, please type it up below, or if you want to share your own wheelie experience, I would love to read it. Now I hope you go and find some flow. I want to give the biggest shout out to my friend Linnea for putting in the work to get these amazing wheelies, and also for being my biggest cheerleader.